So good evening, everyone. Once again, welcome. I appreciate you all coming out to North People's Assembly's Town Hall, speaking regarding MX-3 zoning in the East Ward. I'd like to acknowledge Mantena Global Care for allowing us to use the facility to host this meeting, and the staff, and especially Solange. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I also know that this is a sort of hot topic in the East Ward, so I ask that everybody be mindful and respectful of each other and the opinions of each other. And, it not become, so contentious that we're arguing or fussing and fighting, literally. Just make statements. They'll be answered or addressed in an orderly fashion, and then we'll move forward. I can assure you that what's being said is being heard. I don't know what the outcome of it will be, but I just ask and want to reiterate that, we just stay respectful of each other, please. So without further ado, as you know, with MX-3, it is a topic that comes directly from the Department of Housing and Economic Development. So they are your experts for this evening, along with the mayor who's just visiting and joining the meeting because he is the mayor of our city. We do have Deputy Mayor and Director of the Housing and Economic Development Department, John Palmieri, the city planner, Chris Watson, and a host of other city officials throughout the room. So without further ado, Chris or John, who wants to speak? Mayor?
Yeah, sure. So first, I just want to thank Andrea. She does an awesome job. Thank you
I appreciate it.
Putting this all together. Unfortunately, I have to run to the YMCA for our kids. Just made it to the finals. They're doing the drawing, and I promise to be here for them as well. But I wanted to come at least for the on-start of this meeting. Everybody should have this document. Hopefully they picked it up at the front desk when they walked in. Should have this document that basically goes into detail what our proposal of the MX-3 is. Thanks to Chris, and he just recently got on board and had to tackle this thing right away. So we appreciate his involvement. We met with a few folks to talk about some of the concerns and issues that people had around MX-3. And so we try to take some of those things into consideration. Obviously, some of the things we may not agree on, and we are willing to discuss and sorry, Andrea, argue that if necessary, but
But in a respectful way.
Right. And but I think that looking at this and reviewing it with the EHD, that it kind of makes sense. Obviously, we want a transit-oriented community. Obviously, we want density. Obviously, we want inclusionary zoning. We want other kind of things that some of this stuff triggers. We need those things, not just for this area that we're talking about in question, but for other opportunities that we have throughout the city that we need as well. So all these things are not one-offs. They're not like thoughtless things that we just put together. It's obviously a discussion about how do we create the kind of equitable development that takes place throughout the city. We are struggling around that. I just got finished saying it's not an easy task. I mean, all over the nation, people are trying to struggle around issues of housing and equitable development. We're trying to figure that out here in the city of Newark. There's no community in the country that has figured it out. And we're taking a stab at it. We have an equitable development committee. Hopefully it'll be voted on by the council very soon. These guys and ladies will begin to think about these issues in a citywide and a holistic and a very intense way. Because obviously once you push the on button, in Western democracy and capitalism, there's no way to push the off button. So meaning that all this stuff is going to happen very rapidly. Our job is to try to control it and use it in a way that's going to benefit, majority of the residents of our city without harming people completely and totally. I'm not naive to think that it's not gonna harm
Yeah.
some people. Our job is to make sure we do as little harm as possible and that we have as much equity as we possibly can get as quickly as we can get it. So the things that we are contemplating in the city are centered around those goals and around those ideas. How we get to that thing, how we get to the places we want to go, is a process. We're going to go back and forth around specific issues. Not only do we want inclusionary and equity, and we want money to be used for development in other parts of the city, we also want green space. We also want to make sure there's recreation space. We also want to make sure that there's walkability. We also want to make sure there's opportunity for neighborhoods to not be intruded upon with ugly structures and all kinds of things that just doesn't make any real sense. We want to make sure that there's a plan to it. I know before it felt like a push and tug. It probably was a push and pull and a rush, and we talked about that. We self-critiqued it, and I'm probably harder on some of these guys than these community meetings. But at the end of the day, there are some things that we should have done differently in pushing MX-3 from the beginning, right? There's some things that we should have done. Obviously, when I'm in the heat of it, I'm in the heat of it. I'm going to, fuss at these guys, but push the program at the same time. We're at a space now where I think that we can figure this out in a way that is amenable. Doesn't mean we're going to agree on every step of it, but we should have dialogue around it. Everybody's ideas are important. We should have dialogue and discussion around it. And I don't care how, sometimes the meetings get a little crazy and some of our folks are not used to that, but this is part of the job. So at the end of the day, we have to be in here, you have to stick it out. If you think you've discovered fire, you have to have the courage to share it. So at the end of the day, we got to get out here. That means we got to mix it up. We got to mix it up. And so that's basically what my point is. We've been talking about this last year now. There are multiple projects. There's some projects, I want you to know, I know people think there's only one project. There's multiple projects that are waiting. They're actually waiting to see what happens before they do anything, because nobody wants to begin their project and it turns into, they spend money, they do all kinds of things and nothing happens. So there's a multitude of projects that are waiting for the city, for us to figure out what's going to happen here today. And it isn't coming upon us to figure out which way forward, to have a waterfront that's developed, to have density around the train station, prayerfully to get the governor and even the struggle around the Amazon thing helped us do what we wanted to do. People have no idea. We won 5 months ago. So we have people now focused on our infrastructure, focused on the train station, focused on all these other kind of things. Our job is to keep them there and now get them to begin to invest in that stuff, because we're not interested in developing transit-oriented communities with a train station that looks the way it looks, with the kind of stuff that's going on around there. The development of Pete Francisco Park, all these other kind of things that we're contemplating. And it takes strategy sometimes to get those things happen. Well, not sometimes, all the time. To get those things to take place in the way we want them to take place. Sometimes it's not as apparent as it should be, and we need to have more discussions with folks around that without destroying the game plan at the same time. We just have to be smart about how we get these things done to make sure the community is on board with us and we have a partner in trying to make these things happen and not feel like we're making them happen on our own, because we don't have to be. We don't have to struggle with all these people on our own. We can get community input and figure out how to make this stuff work. This is markedly different, I want to say, before I get out of here, than what was presented the first time when we had these discussions. There's stuff on this that just was not talked about before. It is completely different than it was first discussed, and I am happy about that. There's probably some things on there that you think that should go a little further. And we're going to talk about that and discuss those things as well, how it should go further. The whole conditional approvals, some of that stuff is in there as well in a different phase, but we want to, hopefully you guys talk about all of those things before you get out of here tonight. This is not our last meeting, just our first. So we don't have to hammer everything out right now. I do want to say that tomorrow, the council may advance it. I just got finished talking to them, well, most of them, before I came here. on the first reading. There is time for community input. There's also discussion with them about opportunities for things that may change either from their place or from the floor. So we just have a timeline, and I don't want you to think that we're doing this anyway. I want you to think that we're doing this, but you have an opportunity to get some of this stuff changed that we think that we can make happen, or if it's reasonable or not. So that being said, if you have anything for me before I walk out of here, please.
What's the timeline?
To get it completely finished at the end, is what you're saying?
For introduction, for planning board consistency, for adoption.
I think ultimately the end of it is like the end of December or something like that is the final date that we're looking towards. I think it's the end of December.
So what's the rush? There's a lot of details in here. Why does this have to move so quickly?
Well, there's a few reasons. There's a lot of projects that are, first there's a whole bunch of projects that are on the back burner now because we don't have enough zoning board meetings, right? Then there's a lot of projects that we need to get them moving. Number one, and number two, a lot of this stuff is contingent upon us doing this inclusionary stuff that we want to do as well. We need to get this stuff going before, obviously, the market changes in a way that when we do inclusionary or do something else, it just doesn't matter at all.
Can't we just get it deferred to the beginning of next year? Because this is holiday season and it's a rush. And we didn't have time to input, especially if it's going to first reading tomorrow. A lot of us have to work during the day. Why couldn't it be, isn't December's only one meeting? Or is it still two for the municipal council?
There's 2 meetings still.
So can we just push it, can we defer it to the end of the month so we could have a chance to be there and speak before they pass it for first reading?
Well, you can't speak tomorrow anyway on it, unless you sign up. You can only speak on an ordinance when the public hearing part comes. So that would be the second meeting, not the first.
Will these projects that are backburner be subject to inclusionary housing ordinances?
Prayerfully, that's what all the ones now, yes.
Some there's been some that have been waived already. Some projects that have been waived.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Nobody's been waived unless, we only have the authority to waive that. They don't have the authority to waive it. We're trying to make sure that every project that is put in the MX-3 is subject to inclusionary zoning. That's what we're trying to make sure happens for us.
So you said that this ordinance was completely different from the ordinance that was invalidated by the.
God said there's some things that are different in this, in the structure of this, and some of the things that we've added in that are different from the first ordinance.
Right,
Yes.
so do you want to highlight which ones are different? Because it seems by looking at this that they're exactly the same that was invalidated by the court recently.
So the process wasn't validated by the court. All of the stuff that's on the bottom here on this paper, none of that stuff was contemplated.
One of the
That was in the first adoption.
Which was?
All that stuff, the open space, the green roof, the living wall, that was in the ordinance that was adopted and that was ultimately overturned.
Yeah, but I just want to highlight that the complaint specifically said that the ordinance was not substantially compliant with the master plan, so that's one of the counts that the complaint won was affirmed by the court. So why are we here a second
No. That's,
in the order?
so we don't agree with that part. We don't agree with the court said that.
That's what the law stands, and that's what the judge of the first instance.
First of all, the law says that the master plan can be changed as long as there is reason, right? That there's reason given. That's what it says. We know that the court knows that, the judge knows that. We can have a whole debate about what the law says in here, but that's not what we're doing. Obviously,
I'm not trying to ask for that. I just was asking, where do you see? You said that they were the same. I'm asking very clearly, like if you could just state very, succinctly highlight the differences between the prior and the one that was invalidated by the court.
some of the stuff, it talks about the feet. Some of it talks about height of the property. Some of the things that are highlighted. There also is going to be conditional approvals on things above a specific amount of feet. Should be in there as well. So I know based on our discussions that we had, there's going to be some differences in this than it was the first time. I know that based on the discussions we had, so I'm trying to read this whole document that I have, so.
Including the height limit?
Well, the height limit is, it should be 145 feet based on, what I see here and what we talked about in our meetings.
Correct.
So I just wanted to make sure I read it here to be clear before I said it.
And that was in the prior ordinance, it was 12 stories in the prior ordinance and a loophole for 20 stories, and it's.
No, there is no loophole for 20 stories in this at all. There's none. There's no loophole for 20 stories in this, none. At the end of the day, anything above that has to get a conditional approval by the community. Anything above what we're talking about here has to get conditional approval.
So what's the maximum height for a high-rise multifamily dwelling in the MX-3?
145
period.
Where does it say that in
So
the
if
section
you
for
look at the
high-rise?
ordinance, right, it does define that.
It says
So-
10 stories, 120 feet, plus an additional 1 story per 12 feet of height permitted for each additional 1,000 square feet up to an area of 1,000 square feet, maximum 20 stories.
So that's how high-rise dwellings are defined by our zoning
But where does it
ordinance.
restrict it for the MX-3?
But the MX-3 ordinance, and if you just read over to your left, it will also say the MX-3 zone is 145 feet, period.
It doesn't say that under the high-rise though.
It says it under MX3.
Yes. So
MX3.
it says, yes,
MX3
yeah.
shall not
It says in MX3,
shall not exceed.
That's not the ordinance, this is the ordinance.
yeah, but the ordinance here states, right, the MX3 for residential and commercial use, building height shall not exceed 145.
Wait, listen, we're not trying to trick you or fool you, or whatever. That's what the ordinance is gonna say. 145 feet, there will be no loopholes. Anything above 145 feet will get conditional approval.
So why can't we include it in the
It's
section on
highlighted there,
high-rise?
sir. If you read this, it clearly says, high-rise dwellings are all permitted in zones with exception of MX3. We must define how the city define a high-rise structure. And a high-rise structure can go as much as 20 stories. However, we are saying in the MX3 zone, that definition does not apply. MX3 will only allow for you to go maximum 145 feet.
And that
Period.
means 12 stories.
And anything above.
And we're only permitting maximum of 2 of those stories of parking. Because we do not want to now defeat how we're defining transit-oriented development. We can't on one hand say we would like to promote this type of density to capture all of these sustainable values and then go counter to that right hand or the left hand and say build a parking garage.
Right.
So
So
if
we're
you
not making it mandatory that they put parking in there.
Well, if you do a 10-foot floor to floor, which for a residential building isn't that far off, you're looking at a 14.5-story building.
No.
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 It's gonna increase our to 12-story building.
Anything above the 145 feet needs to get conditional approval. Let me say it again. Anything above 145 feet needs to get conditional approval. Anything above 145 feet needs to get conditional approval. It means that if it is above that, no matter what trick you come up with or what scenario or algorithm you design, if it's above 145 feet, you have to get conditional approval. That means you have to go to the community and get, and the conditions that are set upon you have to, be agreed upon, it has to pass the planning board in order for you to get the approval that you need. Anything other than that is not going to fly. That's it. Anything other than that is not going to fly.
So I just want to make sure I understand. So it's going to be 10 story, so 10 residential and 2 floors is going to be.
So how the ordinance is written now, so there's a confusion between required and permitted. So we're not requiring parking because the requirement of parking goes counter to what this ordinance is about. This ordinance is about following the master plan that actually talks about transit-oriented development. It talks about building density around our train stations. If we now require parking, then we're going against what that is saying, but we are permitting parking and permitting parking only for 2 floors, maximum of 2 floors.
So that'd be 10 plus a 2 will equal 12.
Yes,
So if you don't do the parking, it would be 12 stories of
Yes.
residential.
yes.
Oh.
Yes. However, a question might come up from that. What we are seeing is that from the pro forma perspective, a developer knows you bring a building that is 12 stories without any parking, you're not selling any of those units.
Plus, let me just say something. I want to backtrack a little bit because we keep having this talk about the master plan, right? Because we looking at this master plan like it's the Bible, but you look through. But at the end of the day, none of the things that we're asking that benefit the city, none of it is in the master plan. None of it. There's no requirement for us to do any sustainability. There's no requirement for us to do any environmental stuff. There's no requirement for us to do any inclusionary. There's no requirement for us to do cumulative impact. There's no requirement for us to do any of those things. So most of the things that we're asking for people to do does not mirror the master plan at all. So at some point, we're going to have to rethink what we are holding on to as the Constitution of the city of Newark. None of the things that we want these people to do, that we're asking them to do, that will create equity in our city, exist in the master plan as it is written presently. It is not there. Nothing about environment, nothing about equity, nothing about affordable housing. None of that stuff existed. None of it. So if we just stay true to exactly what the master plan says and go about our business, we couldn't do none of the things that we wanted to do in the city at all. At all. So at some point, we have to figure out, like, not throw the baby out with the bathwater here, how to figure out how to get this stuff done, as expeditiously as we can before the market changes in our faces and we can't get anything done. And two, how to do it in a way that helps us in the city get exactly what we want around a transit-oriented place, around density, without destroying people's neighborhoods. We agree with that. But there are some timelines, some other conditions that are conflicting here that we just have to figure out. I wish it was easy for us to push a button or snap our fingers and things happen the way we want them to happen. That's just simply not the case. It's just simply not the case. And we're not stopping people from coming over to our city or building development or doing those things. They're going to build 20 stories here, do this, do that, without the MX-3. We're trying to create a transit-oriented village that makes sense, that's structured, so when people come, we can make them do something for the city that does not insist that they do it in the master plan now. They don't have to do any of these things right now.
And to the mayor's point, if you just look at the map as to where we're trying to upzone the R5 district, as it is right now, it does permit for mixed-use residential to come in at 8 stories.
Right.
But how it's written now, that 8 feet residential, 8 floors have none of these sustainable goals. So at some point we have to ask ourselves, are we willing to stick to a document that gives us no type of sustainability, or do we want sustainability? And how do we, in a sense, capture that? Because it has to be like some sort of give back. And
I don't think it's an accurate statement, because you're trying to say that you want to push down our throat, the greens, all these beautiful things that we want, like we clearly agree with you about the green roof, all these living green walls, but clearly the master plan that we, the community voted for it, we still want the 8 stories that are in the master plan that you now want to show down our road, the 10/2, or magically there's still confusion whether the 20, we're going to take the mayor's voice for it, 20 stories will not happen. But we're not in disagreement about the green, the new sustainability movement. We agree with you.
Yeah, but the problem is, sir, is that you can't force people to do stuff unless you give them something. That's just the law. And the master plan does not say, the problem with the previous thing was that they didn't clearly say that it contradicted the master plan and the reasons why it contradicted the master plan.
No notice
Can I finish?
given to the community.
No, I understand that.
Also, like,
we passed that. I understand that. I said
that it's like after the holidays, after Thanksgiving, nobody's around in town still. They're on vacation.
Right.
Why are you saying
this is not what I'm saying is that we're past understanding what the issues were. We're still and I said in the beginning, this is not the last meeting, it's the first one. We're gonna continue to have this. Doesn't mean we're gonna agree with you all the time, unfortunately, but it also means that at the end of the day, we can't force conditions on people. We can't make people do inclusionary zoning because we want them to. We can't make people put a green roof in their thing because we want them to. We can't make people do stuff.
Why not?
We can't because the law.
People vote for it democratically. Why not?
Because that is theoretically what happens in this Western democracy that we live in capitalism. We can't force them to do that unless the city is giving them something. That's a fact. We can't force people to do inclusionary zoning, put affordability in a property, unless the city is giving them something in return. if we could make them do that without it's their property, it's their money, right? Unless the city is giving them a tax abatement or anything other than that, then we can't make them do these things, right? And that's just a fact, right? It's a fact. I wish it wasn't a fact, but it is a fact.
So you're saying that policies, regardless of whether they go against the voting wishes of people in the neighborhood, is still okay because of specific entities and the specific capital interest and the specific.
What I'm saying is that there's an overall, I'm saying there's a larger goal that we have to keep in mind as well. And sometimes our parochial needs do not jive well with what we're trying to do, citywide on a larger level. We need to figure that out, and we may need to compromise on some of these things in order to get progress. Absolutely, yes.
But Mayor, can you just, for the sake of clarity, kind of paint a picture with the new ordinance and without, let's say 10 years out? So what does this neighborhood look like? What does this area look like 10 years out if we go forward with this? Or
Yes.
So when the master plan was written, our R5 zone didn't exist. And the master plan does talk about 8 stories being the maximum. If you read the R5 zone ordinance, it gives you that 8 feet. But then the time that elapsed from when we have this R5 to now, all we see is that parking lot still parking a car. Development is not there. But I think what the mayor is trying to say is that at this point in Newark's history, we are seeing an interest in trying to create the type of density that our master plan talks about, and we have an opportunity to capture that. And we are trying to do that. We are trying to do that so that 10 years from now, we don't have to address this issue. We don't have to address the issue as where's the housing for the improved population, the increased population we've seen in Newark. Where's the housing? Where's the inclusionary housing for people who can't afford? So it's a moment in time for us to capture that.
Plus, what we have now and what will be there, because you can't force people to do stuff on their own property, it'll be a bunch of parking lots. And at the end of the day, these guys, if you don't give them the density, they can make more money off of the project by leaving it as a surface parking lot and charge people. Granted, some of the performer and the bottom line is higher than. I mean, we can argue with them that they're making profit, not just as much as profit as they want to make, right? So they can make more profit leaving it as a surface parking lot without density. If you force people to put a box up, they're not going to develop it because they can make more money leaving it like that. That's a problem. We are trying to force them.
First of all, surface parking lots are not permissible in the zone already.
Right, no.
And secondly, doesn't the inclusionary
It's not permissible.
ordinance already stand regardless of whether you do an MX-3 ordinance? The inclusionary ordinance was passed. It will go into effect regardless of whether you do that. So
but the inclusionary zoning doesn't say that you must. It says you must if you're asking for some conditionals. If you're building more than 30 new or substantially renovated.
What will happen is when the market changes and you don't need a tax abatement, you don't have to come to the city for anything. You don't have to ask us for anything. You can build it because the market has changed and you don't need subsidy. If you don't need subsidy, you can build without the city giving you anything, and then we can't require you to do anything because you're building it with your own money without subsidy. The MX-3, their parking lot's there now, right? We can't force people to develop their parking lot because they own it. They own it, right? They own it. Whether we make it an MX-3 or whatever it is, they own the parking lot. You can't force people, unfortunately, to develop their parking lot. You cannot. What you can do is incentivize them to develop the property, right? That's what you can do. And it takes push and pull.
Harrison has 5 stories. Why does Newark have to have 12?
Well, Harrison is not Newark. And Harrison does not have the train, what we have and all the other kind of things, the density that people want. They don't want that.
They don't want the density in the Ironbound. The density belongs in the central zone, not in the Ironbound.
That's not true. People do want it.
Church is protected.
They do want it. If they didn't want it, we wouldn't be having this discussion.
Let's stick with the surface parking lots issue because
If they didn't want it, we wouldn't have this issue.
another court ruled that the surface parking lot that now wants to get built for the 12 stories was illegal, that the operation of the parking lot was illegal. So these arguments saying like, oh, these properties are gonna still be parking lots, they're not gonna be developed. We got a court to invalidate the Like the
That's
surface
one-
lot, they cannot operate as a parking lot, so
Sir, that's
the
one.
developer is seeking to develop.
Let me tell you what happened, because you have misinformation.
No, it's not misinformation. It's people that sued and won the case against the
Right.
city and against that developer.
No, against the
Say that the
developer
parking lot was
about
the operation of the parking lot.
Land, all of this stuff, whether it was behind closed doors or not, it happened, right? It happened, right? It was happening for years. It was happening for years, and it's going to continue to happen. And at the end of the day, it benefits the city. It benefits the city. It benefits a bunch of people in the city who don't live in this specific area. It might benefit a whole bunch of other people. Unfortunately, but fortunately, I have to contemplate 300,000 residents and other neighborhoods and other folks and figure out how to make development work all over the city and fill gaps in projects and afford to build projects that are happening other places in the city of Newark that need these gaps filled. I think your interpretation of what the judge is saying is not the interpretation that we've gotten. Our corporation counsel can tell you what our interpretation of what he said is. I think you're saying it very straight. That's not exactly the interpretation that took place. We have a completely different interpretation of what that was.
So as far as the notice issue, you're right. They did not notice properly. It's fair. But you have to realize that that's not a substantive issue. That's just a notice issue. That's just, you didn't tell the people in the area properly. Imagine if right now they did that all over again. That means we would have to get into the substance. The second issue is, does it go against the master plan? If it does, the law says you have to first say, yes, it does, acknowledge it. And then after that, explain why you're going against it. If you do that properly, there is nothing illegal about it. The key to it is they failed to notice, hear me out, they failed to notice the people properly, and we acknowledge that. We acknowledge that, 100% acknowledge.
It was not, you guys didn't even make an opposition.
But guess what? We acknowledge
Standing in
it.
front of the community now,
So-
after not even litigating the case and having a judge literally agree with every single point except count two, is very disingenuous.
Okay, so now, and then,
Especially this, like, literally devaluing the most important one, the one which was proper notice. Which
Sir.
you're just saying like, no, it's not.
Sir,
That is
sir.
one of the most constitutional, important
unfortunately, sir,
ways of giving notice.
unfortunately, sir, we're here
That you
today.
didn't do it.
We're here today.
We
And
agree
we
with
have
you.
to, we
They didn't
have
do it
to
properly.
move forward.
We're gonna give it.
So the point
It's
is,
gonna happen.
if we do the proper notice, right, which will be done. If we do the proper notice, which will be done. If the second part is, if we first say that, you know what, it's against the master plan, we may disagree that it is against the master plan. But if we say it does go against the master plan, and we acknowledge it, and then we give substantive reasons on the record in the council that, yes, we're going against the master plan, but as the mayor and as the planner said, for the following reasons, at that point, the court will not have any issues. The law says that you have to do that. They failed to do so, and as a result, that's what we're here now. But I think we should take the opportunity to do one thing. Use this opportunity to do what you had the last time, which was an opportunity to have a dialogue with the administration. The opportunity to say, you know what, we want certain things involved, we want to pull certain things out. Don't use this opportunity to talk about what happened back in the past, because guess what? We're here today. And if you do not speak about what you want, you will not get an opportunity to do so.
Well, what good is having this opportunity if the ordinance is being introduced tomorrow? We need more time, we need more engagement. We actually need engagement before the thing is read and put before council.
Okay, so-
This is really a quick and unfair process.
So let me speak to that. So in the last 3 weeks, there's been a number of people from this area who has come to speak to me and also come to speak to the mayor about what their issues were. We actually have some of them here. I won't identify who they are because that's irrelevant. They sent us a document. It's not a document here, but they sent us a document. We had one-on-one with the people. We had a group conversation and things of that nature. We did that on 2 occasions, and as a matter of fact, I think he did one after that. So that on 3 occasions in the last month or so. With that said, after tomorrow, you still have an opportunity to meet again. And on a number of occasions. And then the most important day, which will be when it's on for second reading, is when you give your context to the council. And as a result of that, those folk will have an opportunity to say yay or nay. But we want you to take the opportunity to speak to the mayor and the folk from EHD about what you want.
So after those meetings, what changes were made to the ordinance? Because I have not been able to find anything substantive.
So I have a suggestion. Can we just do a committee?
Talking about that doesn't exist.
Can we just do a time where we could literally like go over the ordinance together and also go over the master plan together so everyone could be on the same page? And then from there, we were able to plan after the second meeting what we want.
First of all, I think the master plan should be changed. That's my personal opinion. There's people in City Hall that go back and forth with me. I think it should be changed. I think it's limited. I think there's things in it that should be added, and I think people are holding on to it simply because they did it, and that's okay. I mean, at the end of the day, there's some things in it that it just is not. It does not achieve what we needed to achieve at this time in the history of our city. It does not. Those things need to be dealt with, and we need to be honest about that. It's just everything that we're doing is not in that master plan. Everything. So we can have a discussion about that. I mean, that stuff is just simply not there, right? And I think that is a longer process, and it takes a longer time. Right, and ultimately that I agree that does need to happen. Can we wait until we do all of that for us to proceed? I don't think we have the time to do that. I just don't, and that's my opinion. I don't think we have the time to wait until we go through the process to change the entire master plan before we do some of the things that need to happen right now. Some things need to happen right now, and some things we can wait until the master plan. But ultimately, everything we do needs to be embedded in the master plan. It needs to contemplate how fast the city is moving. But listen, 3, 4, 5 years ago, the city was not moving this fast. We did not have backup. We have stuff that can't get to the zoning board for 5 or 6 months, 7 months. There's a bunch of backup. We have about 40, 50 projects that are behind. We have all this stuff that are happening in the city now. Business development just wasn't happening. It just was not taking place, right? So we can pretend that it's not happening. We can pretend and act like nothing's going on, stick our head in the sand and just go about our business, or somebody has to say these things are happening. How are we going to deal with it and reconfigure the city in such a way that we begin to benefit from this, and that we don't wake up tomorrow and get hit over the head with an avalanche? Because that's what will happen. And ultimately, we'll be arguing about the space around Penn Station, and there's a whole bunch of areas in the city that need immediate attention now.
So how does the community, if all the developers are coming here with the money and the community doesn't have the money, how can we leverage it out that we could start our own community land trust and start building our own communities
and all that stuff we do, right? So prayerfully, the land bank ordinance is being pushed again. It won't be vetoed this time by the governor. We have a series of meetings. There's small developers in the city. All the people you know is these folks down here because that's where they want to be. They're not coming to other parts of the city. We have small developers that are building projects that are affordable projects, that are chronically homeless projects, that are container homes, that are all types of projects that have gaps. They have significant gaps that they can't fill because they're not the guys down here. What we want to do is make the guys down here fill those gaps for those guys so they can create development in other parts of the city. That's what we're trying to do. There's no deep conspiracy to build 20 stories in the East Ward because we just want to do it or we want to help 3 or 4 developers. That's just a BS argument. The reality is it's a larger issue that we have to contemplate when we're developing the city. And is there some compromise you have to make? Yes. Yes, absolutely we have to make some compromise. Yes. I wish I didn't have to make it, but yeah, there are some compromises we do have to make in order to get the things done that we need to get done. We can't force developers, unfortunately, to do anything for us unless we give them something. My first contemplation of inclusionary zoning was to do it all over the city, despite the minute you do development, you have inclusionary zoning is set off. Any property, any development, old, new, reconstruction, redevelopment. But legally, I was told that you cannot do that. You cannot do that because you're not giving these people that they have the right to build what they want to build with their own money.
And that's the state statute.
No, that's the United States Constitution, right? So at the end of the day, we can't force them to do these specific things. You just can't do it, right? We just can't do it unless they're getting something in return. Tax credits from the state, tax abatements from us, specific zoning, variances, all of those things can make us force them to do things that we want them to do in the city. That's just it.
One more question, Mayor.
Now I gotta go.
In the ordinance, it says that it's building like this is to protect adjacent low-density neighborhoods. I'm guessing that's the surrounding area, around the area. Can you explain how that works actually, and how this is not going to impact rents or property tax in the area for homeowners?
It is gonna, to say that it's not gonna impact property values, it absolutely is gonna impact property values.
So can you explain just how it's, the language in there says
Because
it's
the assessed property is gonna go up because it's gonna be valued more because of the development that goes around it. That's just the contradiction of living in, so either it's gonna be undeveloped or underdeveloped, and your property values will be steady. If you develop the stuff around it, then the property value is gonna go up. If your property values go up, your taxes are gonna increase based on the assessment of your property. That's the market force in this place where we live. So at the end of the day, that's going to happen. The only way you can force these guys not to like arbitrarily raise rents is by having rent control, right?
That was my next question.
Yes,
What's going along with rent control as far as enforcement?
Force them to put affordable units in there and rent control those units so they don't force people out and have some kind of right to counsel that we just got finished talking about, so people not illegally evicted. Will these people try to do that? Absolutely. Is it going to affect the thing? Yes. To say anything other than that is a lie. It's absolutely going to affect it. We live in Western democracy. Capitalism is going to affect all this. What we're trying to do is make sure we mitigate some of these things so it does not hit our community like an avalanche. That's what we're trying to do. Do I have the answer to stop capitalism from affecting our community? No.
I got a second question. You talked about, I guess anybody can answer this. You talked about there's projects that are waiting in line to see if this ordinance passes. Are any of those projects actually going to go over that 12-story threshold?
No, well, the ordinance is written is that they can't. They just can't.
No, I guess my question is, are there any projects that are on the table right now proposing to go over that?
No. No. But I just want to backtrack on what the mayor said in terms of the master plan. By statute, we have to give you a master plan. You have to produce a master plan every 10 years. That process in terms of community dialogue starts.
I gotta go, but let me interrupt you right here. So at the end of the day, people will put stuff on their plan, and they'll anticipate getting the variance, right? They'll anticipate getting the variance because people have been getting. I wish I had total control over the zoning board. I don't. People will get a variance, and they'll go above and beyond what we even want them not to do. The only thing that's going to prevent them from doing that is a conditional approval. So now they have to come to the community and get conditions that community suggests. If they don't do these things, then they can't get the approval, right? And so it forces the zoning board, and I got this from these guys. So the zoning board has to now abide by those specific things, and it's not just me calling people on the phone, asking them and begging and pleading them. Now they have to come to the community and get conditional approval. So yes, will they try it? Absolutely. They will.
Thank you, Mayor Baraka, for your time. I know you spent a little more time than expected. I appreciate your expertise. So, as mentioned in the beginning, I know more people came in, so I appreciate your time and attention to this matter. At the table are your Housing and Economic Development Department experts. So Chris Watson is the city planner, deputy mayor, and director of Housing and Economic Development, John Palmieri, and chief of development, Carmelo Garcia, excuse me. So if there are any more questions, they are more than able to field them. Sorry.
Okay, so
This gentleman.
So the mayor is talking about how passing this will address gaps in affordable projects throughout the city. Can you explain that?
I think what the mayor is trying to say is that we have a need for affordability throughout New York.
Yeah.
Do we need to provide those affordability where they exist? For instance, do I need to now build?
Those developers who are going to be encouraged to build in the South and West Ward. And then Pat C becomes the one where we're saying to master redevelopers, you have a choice, which is what the mayor's pushing and the council, is to go and accept some rehabilitative lots in the West and South Ward, and that becomes your obligation doing an off-site development. And the redevelopment and rehabilitation comes into play in that fashion. Now, more and more redevelopers are liking the Pat C because they believe and are buying into the mayor's vision about this is how do we have all ships rise throughout all the neighborhoods within the city of Newark. So that's what he's speaking about when we're talking about that potential emerging loan fund or that master redeveloper hiring a MBE, WBE redeveloper who's a small redeveloper and can build 10 lots, 2-3 family homes for home ownership or for rentals to affordability. That's the key factor in that. And just, to give my 2 cents on the master plan, I mean, it's critical to note that the master plan is a living document. And the administration, based on their vision, right, can say, here's what I'd like to see happen in this area to stimulate further development, not and to maximize density for purposes of whether it's transit-oriented development, such as between the Penn Station and Broad Street Station area, which has always been a part of the mayor's goal to increase the number of residents downtown from 4,000 to 10,000 within his 3 to 5 year term in office, right? That's what he said when he first ran. The second time around, again, the same thing. We need to increase the residential development in the downtown. And part of that, the Ironbound, which in the East Ward is a natural asset. That's why he's focused on Mulberry Commons and Riverfront Park. As you guys know, you've been very intricately involved with that, Nancy and Arnold. Because of that, and Drew, and ICC, because of that, trying to make sure that we increase the open space by 35 acres so that more and more residents are preserved. Preservation is the key, preserved in the Ironbound community, and whatever's being built based on the zoning or redevelopment plan or master plan forces the redevelopers to invest in those distressed neighborhoods. So that's pretty much what.
So that investment then is going to come at the expense of inclusionary zoning in that area by Penn Station.
It's not the expense, because again, Penn Station is a TOD, it's a transit-oriented development area. It's not at the expense, it's what becomes the equitable trade-offs to make sure that all ships rise, that every neighborhood in the community is benefiting from an economic justice perspective, and that's really what it comes down
But it's either or. You either have the inclusionary in your building, or you can do something in another part of the city. So it isn't either or.
We're going to tag team here, Arnold.
I said it is either or.
No, that Carmelo's examples are silly. But I would say this about the Ironbound. Projects that get done within this zone that comply with the IZO or affordability. I'd like to believe that of the 20% that they're committed to having to provide, that 10% will happen on site. I'd like to see, it doesn't have to go to the South Ward and West Ward, but it could be a more diverse use of those funds. So in my example, as I look at this, I see developers within this zone doing projects and committing, if not 20%, because that may be what they want to do, 10%, and then maybe some offsite, and then maybe some of the buyout, as Carmelo talked about the different paths. So I think it can happen.
Would you require
But it can't happen in terms of helping develop Terrell homes, helping Hyatt Court, helping having those affordable projects in the Ironbound.
They're a little different. But just in terms of the ICO, a developer may well commit to doing 20% on site. And that would be great for the Ironbound.
Which is required by law.
Not on site. Not on site necessarily. So that may be the way this happens. It'll depend on the developer. One of the other thing that I'd like to say about this new ordinance, this is not a surprise. This was presented a year ago, and it passed. But for its technical flaws, it would have become law. So, but wait a minute, so just let me finish. And so that didn't happen, okay? So notice went out to 90% of the people within the radius, but not 100%, fair enough. And the master plan, consistency with the plan. As Carmelo said, it's a living document. And the planning board and/or the city council has every right to consider the benefits of being in a hub, in a transportation hub, to offset the language in the master plan, which is a little arcane, I would argue. So that is something the council, the city council, who represents the city at large, is able to do. And we'd like to think that as we present this to them, that in coming weeks, that they'll consider that and make those adjustments. And one last thing. The previous ordinance that was presented a year ago, last summer, a year ago, July, got approved before the first, I guess. That talked about other options for developers to go higher based on the size of their site, higher of upwards of maybe 100 feet, from 145 feet to maybe 240 feet, based on the size of their lot. We're saying no, that's over. 145 is the maximum. And cities that care about urban hubs and transportation hubs do it all over the country. Now, we want to do it in a way that doesn't wreak havoc for the neighborhoods. Of course, we're being sensitive to those neighborhoods that abut. The ferry corridor is certainly very important. We're saying you got to stay 100 feet away from anything along the corridor. You got to step back after 8 stories. And listen, many developers may not want to go up to 145 feet, but we will permit that if they meet those sustainability goals and make other investments in infrastructure. So this is not a wild idea that cities do. This is a very common thing that Jersey City and Hoboken and Boston, it happens all over. Of course, we need to remain sensitive. And a few neighborhood residents will be upset about it. But I believe that the overall good of the city, it far outweighs any negative immediate impact. I'd like to think that the neighborhoods are going to be sustained over time with this kind of investment, and that there'll be more retail opportunities and employment opportunities. And we'll do that infill within those junk lots and those industrial areas that abut Penn Station. We need to make an investment as a city to become a top-tier city, and this is the time.
So how can we, just one moment. Drew had a question.
I just had, 2 notes. One, Carmelo, do you want to mention what we talked about the 20 stories?
Yeah,
and then 2, about the 3 inclusionary avenues.
Got it.
From the intent of the ordinance, what I've read is the intent is to put the 20 units on site, and the developer needs to show why they can't put it on site, and then get that approved by the mayor or by you.
And I'll address that, Drew. Number one, so we're clear, right? Because there's a confusion. Whoever is pulling the ordinance from Legistar as a public readable document is still seeing the 20 stories into the 243 feet. That's inaccurate. That's stricken, right? That was one of the things that the mayor, dealing with James and a few folks on the plant Newark that I know of that we've been in conversation with, we agreed that that was automatically one of the items that was stricken. I spoke to Corporation Council also this evening, when in fact, Drew and I were talking on the sidebar about it. That is not happening, okay? That was one of the changes, one of the major changes, material changes to the ordinance that is critical. And now what came out of the discussion that the mayor had with the folks from Plant Newark as the ambassadors who were talking about, how do we make it better, right? And so that is something I wanted to just clear up. And I spoke to Corporation Council about that because the one that is accessible in Legistar is still showing that language there. That language is to be stricken and not be a part of the ordinance.
When can we expect that?
So again, Corporation Council is going to ensure that, immediately by tomorrow morning, if not late tonight, that, and Chris Watson, hopefully, as the planning officer, will make sure that that is in fact shared. Number two, Drew, to the point of inclusionary zoning. So there are absolute, the mayor was very aggressive and eager to get the inclusionary zoning done. As you guys know, he championed that, right? It was authored and championed by the mayor because it was necessary, right? Because we knew that eventually, as the mayor talked about, this avalanche would be coming in redevelopment. And so therefore, to protect and preserve what we needed for those low mod income families and the work class families, that's what we needed to do. And that was achieved. It was approved, it was passed. And the 3 pads basically say that yes, we are pushing for the 20% to be in there. We have NW Financial, who's our financial advisor, who does a clear financial impact analysis to determine whether or not the pro forma in its economic feasibility does make sense, right? Can the project, but for this 20%, succeed? And they have to demonstrate that. And then of course they meet with myself, John as director, Evans, who's the director of development, and our attorneys, and they have to demonstrate, the onus is on them, that they can't make that project doable but for this ask an option of B or C, right? And we've been pushing them away from B because B is the easier one, right? That, it's the easy one to say, I'm gonna do a payment in lieu. And we say, no, wait a minute. You gotta look at, option C, which is the one we really want to see you fulfill in Pat C. And a lot of them now are buying into it. It was innovative, it was different. So they were like, oh, we're not comfortable with this, we're not used to this. And what happened is, as they explored it further and we broke it down to them and educated them on this path, now they're saying, oh wow, this makes a lot of sense. So you have some projects like the one on Christie Street. That is where we can use that to defer, right, with the Terrell Homes on them. We can defer affordable housing there and give subsidy to that, so that redeveloper can make that project work as a JV with ICC or anybody else. So that's really what we've been focused on and really pushing hard on.
Okay, there's an order of questions. I've been looking at hands. Tanisha.
Okay. So one, we already have the riverfront redevelopment plan already passed, where it's gonna build up to over 24 stories, correct? The riverfront, right?
Yeah, so that's pretty much it's 40-story, 25 stories.
Okay, so we have that, and then with the MX-3, and you have to realize Ironbound is unique because it's an environmental justice community. So if you keep putting and keep building and building, God forbid, we don't even have an escape route to even get out, first of all. That's one. Number two, since we're so close to Penn Station, the amount of traffic that flows through the community is already detrimental. God forbid if something happened, how are the people going to get out? Number three, we're in a flood zone. God forbid if another hurricane pass through, how are the people going to get out safely? And how are we going to mitigate these issues that we already have?
So, and that's, if I may just real quickly, and I'm going to just pass it off to Chris, I'm going to try to address all 3 of them within 60 seconds. And that's a great feedback, honestly, because we've been doing this now 4 years and we've mulled this over, right? And so comprehensively, number one, it is why Director Ambrose and us, through this whole Baxter Terrace and Peller Square redevelopment, we're utilizing that master redeveloper to build a fire station and a annex headquarters for the Ironbound community. So these are things that are in the works as part of the comprehensive master plan, right? Number two, with the riverfront, the reason why we went forward full steam ahead with the riverfront because we got the Army Corps of Engineer, right, to replenish and to actually rebuild the bulkhead so that we can mitigate on the flooding into the Ironbound community. And with respect to the riverfront, a lot of the riparian materials that are being used are purposely used in order to mitigate if water ever came onto that side. So when the park is there, that serves as a buffer to prevent from the water coming over onto the community side. And pretty much that's what we've been working towards. So it's a part of the comprehensive plan. And three, traffic calming. This is where you have an opportunity as part of this dialogue, right? Because the conversations are necessary. We agree that we want more community outreach. We're going to do more of that as the mayor committed to. But the dialogue is necessary so that you understand that the traffic calming that you're talking about, we're going to mandate more and more redevelopers to do, sort of horizontal murals, which is a part of the traffic calming. I'm not saying that you want it or not. I'm just giving as an example of what is a traffic calming measure. There are other measures that become incorporated into that process. So that's why the dialogue with the master redevelopers or with the Riverfront Park or whatever is happening, it's imperative that we have that constant conversation. So that's the feedback.
But I guess the second part to that question, I guess what Arnold was asking, especially with they also are redevelopers too. They also housing authorities. So like you said, how are we going to protect it, especially when they're not building subsidized housing, they're not building low income housing, and that's a major impact. So why can't we tell these developers, like, listen, we need it, like, it's the right thing to do, especially if you want to come here. And it's like, how are you going to protect the people?
So we've been doing that, just so you know, we've been doing that. No developer can come into the city and do it and dictate as to what it is that they want to develop. We tell them what the needs of the city are, and then they have been obliging to that. They've absolutely been saying, whatever it is you guys want, we're gonna acquiesce to, because we're buying into the vision that the mayor has, and that he knows best from the council and the mayor what the community needs are, and that's what we've been doing. I mean, honest, there's no developer, and John knows, in the last year that can come in here in the last 4 years and say, here's what we want to do. No, sorry, then you're in the wrong city. You need to go to another city, because that's not the way it works in Newark, right? And that's what we've been holding the line on, so we've been doing that, just to let you know, we have been doing that.
And I just wanted to go back to your first question. And your first question did talk about stormwater and remedial flood. So if you read the ordinance, and this is what I'm trying to say, that question is actually addressed. If you look at one of the sustainability goals, number 5, speaks specifically to that issue. Specifically to that issue. You know, and just realize that this is a zoning ordinance of permitted use. Developers still have to go through a process, a planning board and zoning board process, and in that process, there's a professional planning review, there's water and sewer and engineering reviews, and if these city departments don't feel as though those projects capture some of what we need in terms of protecting the city from those type of situations, then they don't get approved.
Yeah, I've been to the meetings and they didn't have it, and they still passed it.
Exactly. Next question is Chris, and then it's in the man.
Can you quickly, on this point?
No, excuse me, sir, we're gonna keep
On the same
order.
point. It's on the same point, it's like a follow-up question, so can you
But,
just give an
no, we're
example?
gonna keep order and we're gonna allow Chris
Who will
to speak.
enforce this stormwater management
We're not gonna
procedure?
address that, we're gonna allow Chris to ask his
Right now, the marking of my Penn station for stormwater management procedures is the no enforcement.
It's okay,
So
you
it's a
talk what you
follow-up.
wanna.
Okay, let the other man speak. My question is somewhat.
So you can adopt his question.
Okay,
Adopt his question.
thank you.
There's been talk about having these conditional uses for this increased density. Frankly, these are not conditional uses in here. They're supplemental standards, which are not the same as conditional uses. Is there any reason that the high-rise multifamily dwellings, the high-rise family or building type, the ground floor commercial building type, and the detached commercial building type are not made conditional uses? Make these sustainable standards part of the actual conditional standards, as well as a maximum of 10 stories as a part of the conditional standards, to provide a statutorily higher bar when they come before the zoning board or planning board for variances. Is there any reason that's not happening?
So you're saying instead of us asking for these sustainability standards at 8 stories, we should ask them at 10? Is that
No, I'm saying you keep the standards in. We actually make them part of the conditional use standards. Because right now, these are permitted as of right uses. They are not conditional uses. Will you make them conditional uses?
I just want to make sure you're talking about for the taller buildings beyond 10 stories,
For the-
12 stories?
Anything
Beyond
above 8 stories.
140.
Anything above 8 stories, so that would be high-rise multifamily buildings. That would be the high-rise multifamily dwellings, which is the use. If you switch over to the permitted building types, it would be the high-rise multifamily building type, the ground floor commercial with commercial or residential above, and the detached commercial building types. Make those conditional uses with the sustainability standards and a maximum of 10 stories being part of those conditional standards.
I wouldn't recommend that. I can understand the argument. I wouldn't recommend
It
that.
gives the neighborhood more protection from.
I understand.
Why would you want to give the neighborhood more protection?
I think 145 feet is a very reasonable standard, as an as-of-right standard with those other sustainability requirements. I think that above 145, there ought to be those kinds of conditions that apply to any request for anything above 145 to 200. Presently, as the ordinance is written, you just come in and apply for variance, right, above 145. You make your case and apply for the variance. I think that there ought to be some, I can understand the argument and give merit to an argument that says above 145 to 200, there ought to be conditions that have to be met before they'll be considered.
Why are we talking about above 145? We're talking about below 145. We're talking at 8 stories or above. And right now, you have these standards that can just go to the planning board and say, hey, we want a variance because it's a tough standard to meet. And the planning board will grant it like candy. Why can't we make this a conditional use so it's a higher burden of proof that they have to meet?
Because 145 feet.
I mean, do you actually want these to be enforced?
I think you need as of right standards so that developers can come to the table with investment capital, knowing that they will comply with a number of city requirements, by the way, not only ICO and the sustainability requirements, but other important goals that we have to build a city. If you start demanding that they come in and make their case and maybe they'll qualify for variance, maybe not, it becomes too unpredictable a process. So for me, 145 as an as-of-right requirement makes sense. Above that, I can see making other conditions.
I mean, already, these are going to require a variance. The question is who's granting the variance and what's the burden of proof? Why not enhance the burden of proof?
But I don't think that's the case, Chris. I think the case here is that if you go above 8 stories, you are required to meet these sustainability standards.
And with a low burden of proof. Why not enhance the burden of proof?
But you're required, but I would think requirement is a higher standard of proof than a conditional use.
Yeah, that's not how it works statutorily. It's about a C variance or a B variance.
Yeah, but if they're not asking for any variances, and
They're not asking for any variances.
as it is right now, Chris, if they want to build a 9-story building, you know what, they're above an 8-story building and they must do these things.
But if they don't want to do these things, they ask for a C variance, it's a low burden of proof. Whereas if it's a conditional use and that's part of the conditional standards, it's a higher burden of proof. It's a greater protection for the neighborhood, while still allowing you guys to get your higher heights that you want.
So your suggestion is just make this a conditional use?
Make that a standard of the conditional use and make the high-rise multifamily and those building types be conditional uses.
He's a good plan, by the way. You're doing a good job, we need you, buddy. You want a job? We're hiring.
He's now the director in Wade.
Yeah, thank you.
I know this very, very well.
I'm gonna try to steal some of that brilliance, but this is the second of 2 things I want to talk about. This is one of our big problems with the process last year and then this year as it goes to the actual details of the bill. We went through this last year, as you know. Now we're in a new place, but we had replied to your request in good faith, over significant hurdles and in very quick time with specific points, which you came back to us about. We replied to you in great detail, and we've got nothing back. And now we have to wait to this meeting to repeat, what you've already heard once after it came out, printed out and wasn't included the first time. So, the mayor talked about the perception of like loopholes and that the thing couldn't be read, and then the 20 stories, which may or may not be in there. We haven't looked at it. We'll have to look. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's not. Maybe there's other things we haven't caught. So that's why that happens, because this thing comes out at the last minute. We got to look at it now and figure it out, and then it's going to come up tomorrow at the council. And what we're really asking for is time for this to get vetted and for people to look at it, so that everyone in the city can understand what they're approving and not approving. And then the other thing goes to just the perception of the rush of the whole thing in general. Same thing happened last year. As you know, it was sent up to the council last minute. The council didn't know what was happening. They didn't have copies of it. They said, wait a minute, let's take a break. And then this goes to the question people had about the 20 stories in there or not. Thing shows up on Legistar today, it's some version. Another version shows up tonight, printed out with hand scratches on it. And that's one of the things we've been asking for all along this process. Is just, what's the rush? Why not do this in the right way so that we really can know what bill's coming up tomorrow and what we're going to try to pass. So
James, can I address that? So I think when the two of us actually met and we were reviewing the document and presented to the mayor, I think I was very clear in asking you to look at that document, present it to the mayor, and look at the ordinance, right? Just compare these two things and the type of standards that you're asking for.
Right.
Just highlight to us
Right.
where is it we weren't meeting those standards.
You saw that, right? You saw that we sent that to you, right?
And you did. And even when comparing what you've now sent to us, all of what you're asking for
Yeah.
is included here.
Well, but
I think
that's,
it's
no, because it's in, this goes to what Chris said, that's exactly one of the things in our original document and the response, and it's what Chris is saying here, it's already been in there all along.
Yeah.
So,
I'm going back to this 20 stories. There's mechanics in our piece, and part of the mechanics of this ordinance is that we must give a definition of what a high-rise building is. We must provide that definition, and that definition is there for that reason. But also we are saying MX-3 does not go to that definition. It's going to be limited to 145 feet. I
right, but
I
I agree with that, we don't have any disagreement or truck with that, because, again, I'm seeing this for the first time tonight, 1 hour ago, but come on, it's still late in the game.
I don't think it's late in the game
And the
at all.
mayor even said,
No, it's not
wanted
late
to
in the
do it
game at
better,
all,
he wanted to
James,
do it right
because
this time.
this is just the beginning of a dialogue, and this is not something that is being introduced to the council tomorrow for adoption. This is just the beginning of this conversation along the continuum. Along the continuum of this process, there are many opportunities for community dialogue, and we're here to listen to that type of council, and so we can improve this. The idea is not to do something in the dead of night. The idea is that, as the mayor explained before, we elect governments to be pragmatic, and this is a level of pragmatism from this administration. We know because they come to our doors that we have an ability right now to capture the type of development that New York wasn't seen in decades.
I get the generalities, and I like, it's fine, and the whole thing about the west and the south and the whole, all that lovely stuff, that's all great, but I'm just talking about this. I want to stick to like MX-3 tonight.
Yeah, but I am sticking to MX-3, and I'm saying that for decades we've seen this as surface parking, and if we don't do something to capture what we know we can capture, believe you me, for the next coming decades, we'll see the surface parking, or we see it as nothing at all.
Oh, I heard the mayor say that, yeah.
So at some point, as a community, I think we have to ask that question. What is it we want, and what are we willing to compromise to get that?
Well, we're close, but I'm just saying, now we're talking about it, so it's late.
I'd like to have Wayne and you submit your comments. You may have already done it, forgive me, because I might not have contributed previous meetings. But if you can, let us know, that's why we're here. Let us know what you think we ought to consider doing to improve the ordinance. And you can get it to us quickly. And again, the council, just take exactly.
We did, we submitted, and then you presented and say that you've met with groups that were us.
You would have had them by now.
We're meeting with you now, we want your.
Not now, like, in the beginning of the meeting, you came by and the mayor was like, oh, we've met with groups, and now apparently everything that was submitted has not been read, because he mentioned the conditional use, that was one of the points that's in the document.
Well, what I'm asking is to submit, you're here now, you've made comments, you've identified issues. When, I'm sorry, the planner for Chris has made a few very good suggestions that we want to consider. If you get them to us, we will.
We did.
You will submit it to the city.
So we're not gonna dwell on the past, he's asking for it to move forward.
You need the best, you need the best. I'd like to see this.
Okay, so who has the next question? Do you have an actual question now?
Yeah, actually.
Okay, so it's your turn.
So, did you read the document that was submitted like that over by the community members?
You guys have to
We read it.
Right.
It
Okay.
doesn't mean that you have to adopt and accept everything that's in
We're
it.
not arguing.
Let's be clear, right?
An ordinance is being presented
It's a
tomorrow.
relationship, it's a partnership,
Yes,
there's
so
a compromise.
Online right now, the database is showing a 20-story.
But it's wrong, right? We're not gonna be the horse. That's stricken, that's out. It's on record, it's out.
Yeah, but that's what's introduced tomorrow.
No, it's not. It's not. I'm telling you that when you go tomorrow, you will not see that.
Purpose of the community, that's what they're seeing.
But that's why you're an ambassador here to tell the community that is not what is happening, right? We rely on each other, in this relationship to, hold on, wait, I'm talking, brother, you know me. You're not gonna wait back, so cut it out. But I wanted to highlight something. I want to highlight something. You have folks here, the mayor gathered everybody from his economic house development team. You also have, our business administrator in the house, right? You have our COO for the city. Everybody, corporation council, to make sure that this is done the way the mayor had envisioned it. Not everything, right, at 100%, but as much as we could. And we struck out the language relative to the 20 stories. That is to be eliminated. We made that very clear in our conversation with Corporate Council, the mayor, when we had our meeting, we talked about that, right? So what is being shown here is not what's going to be tomorrow voted on, because that was already agreed upon, that was to be deleted from that language. That's a big, major material change. So we can continue to talk about everything else, under the sun. The reality is that, the mayor's heard, planned or ICC residents in the community and said, yes, I agree. He's admitted. We didn't do it the best way possible that we could have. Here we are. We're back at it. We're trying to get it right, and it's a collaboration. And so in this partnership, we just want you to at least trust a little bit more than where you guys are not trusting. And then tomorrow we'll see. And I appreciate that. I appreciate it. And trying and doing the two different things. I just want you guys to just see tomorrow. And like I said, we have every administrator from City Hall here to make sure that this is executed correctly. That's all.
The gentleman in the TV hat.
There's just a couple of questions here. Maybe a comment first, though. It seems that our philosophy has been that we have to give away ourselves to have people come here. This has been a designation for a lot of developers, period. Without giving away give backs and everything else. They want to come here, partly for some of the things the mayor has done, but for a lot of other reasons. This is the place to be. Yet we feel that we're in a buyer's market. We have to give away, like a fire sale. We're giving up everything. Right now it seems that Ironbound is on the block. We're selling Ironbound to get these people come in for some type of effluvial benefit we're gonna get later on. That they're gonna build here, go there. Hasn't seemed to materialize. And that seems to be a problem of thinking. Why are we thinking that way? We should not. It's been going on for years. It needs to stop yesterday. Hasn't stopped yet. Another thing, we're talking about communication here, and some of the issues that people brought up already, this idea, well, things have changed. If you had copies of the ordinance here now, there'd be less conversation about that. That would all be a dead issue. Because here it is, read it. That's what we're gonna be about. But it's like, well, we talked about this and we're gonna change this, we're gonna do all that. It's not happening. It's just not happening. So that needs to happen. That needs to take place. Just a side issue about the Army Corps and that barrier in Riverfront Park. Most of Riverfront Park already has a bulk there, and it's not necessary. Army Corps is functioning really down further to the east. That's where we have most of the flooding coming in. If they put the bulkheads up here, a lot of those would make us like a big fishbowl. The water can't get out. And we will flood after they put the bulkheads in. So that's just an issue that's been bothering for a long time. But again, these things that are said and not written down don't mean that much. Because, oh, I didn't mean it that way. You know I didn't, you understand. That doesn't mean it wouldn't stand in court. Give people the respect to add the papers here. Pass out the papers. Okay, now number 5. We need to look at that, number 5. Number 6, we need to change that. Then you have something that's tangible to work with. But this talking back and forth, a lot of that can be totally eliminated by just showing us the ordinance. It can be eliminated completely. We wouldn't have to even have the conversation. Either it's there or it's not there. And then now that's done. We can go into more important things. The idea of this rushing is bad. You're gonna have so many people angry with you.
Just hold us down at least.
So many people angry with you because you're going over the same thing over and over again. You give the same ordinance back and say, but it's on different colored paper this time, so it's that's not getting it.
But so
that's not getting it.
So one thing to understand, my name is Evans Anyan, I'm a director of community development here in economic housing development for the city. Prior to coming here, I was planning board council for the town of Scott Plains. town attorney and everything. I hear what you're saying. But one thing to be mindful of, and I can't stress it enough, I keep saying all the time, is, the court, you keep saying there's no communication, there's no, no adherence to the ordinance. We could have arguably brought forth the same ordinance that the court considered. The one thing I understand, the court never got to the substance of the MX-3. What they found on their hand of what struck down the original ordinance was the notice provision.
No, that's not true.
It is. I mean,
No, it was a summary judgment motion for the failure to reply. So we didn't get to any of the items, actually.
That's exactly what I said. We just repeated exactly what I said. But
you're saying it was only the notice, it wasn't any of it, the city didn't reply, so.
When there's not a proper response to the court.
Without having some.
Sorry, we ran out of copies. My apologies, we ran out of copies, but the ordinance that people are referring to in this audience is because they got a copy upon entrance, and this is the ordinance that will be introduced tomorrow. And I just want to address one more time. Structurally, ordinances are written in a particular way. In the MX-3 zone, it's 145 feet, period. How we define high-rise buildings goes up to 20 feet. But if you read the ordinance, it is as explicit as day. It's as explicit as day. In the MX-3, building height shall not exceed 145 feet, period. But we need to provide an explanation as to how our zoning ordinance overall defines high-rise multi-family dwelling units.
That's okay, again, that's in the doc, you're gonna pass out. Definition is important, I understand that. That's not an argument, but it has to be given to the community. The mayor talked several times about it will go back for community feedback. You can't have feedback if nobody knows. You can't have that.
Sir,
the zoning board
I will
are not speaking, because the community goes to speak at the zoning board and the planning board. A lot of times, they're just sort of ignored. They give a lot of good reasons why this project should not, from infrastructure lack and sewer and water to traffic problems, all this. Oh, that's not a problem. I mean, what idiot would believe you can build a 20-story building even, and it's not going to affect the traffic? That's ludicrous.
But sorry,
that's absolutely ludicrous.
So I just want to say, this is not disparaging where you're coming from as a community member, but the reason why the applications go through a professional planning process is so that, for instance, if a project comes to the neighborhood where there's a concern that there might be a traffic concern, a professional traffic planner, an engineer provides a traffic study. The board is given a comprehensive package on every single project to consider. That comes from engineering, that comes from planning and zoning, it comes from water and sewer. So we use all the tools available to us so that the planning board, and we're not the planning board, so the planning and zoning board could make the type of prudent decisions on projects. And I know in my short tenure here, I've seen multiple projects be taken off of the schedule because they were deemed complete. Their traffic engineer didn't show up to me to give expert testimony. Their professional planner didn't turn up.
It will be online in the morning. By 8 a.m. it's going to be done.
First thing in the morning, 9 a.m.
9 a.m.
Give us 11.
A good hour before the meeting. Council meeting starts at 10.
Let's get to work.
It should be before 10. Hopefully before the council meeting starts.
How can you have the council even discuss it if there's not a copy of the ordinance? If there's a copy of the ordinance, to load that onto the website should be a matter of like 5 minutes.
The council should
If you have
ready
a copy.
before.
If you have the copy. If you don't have a copy, then you can't do it.
Sir, tomorrow's just an introduction of this ordinance, sir.
Right.
But the wrong wording should be legislative. I mean, I want to reinforce Lenny's point that, the actual ordinance should be visible, that the council should be able to read it, the community should be able to read it. We should know what the city's doing. And it's really important. If we're not doing it right, we should slow it down. That's what got us the litigation problem in the first place.
We have copies available. We'll have it online in the morning. Okay? Be introduced tomorrow. there's a public hearing, another community meeting, the council's gonna have to do a second passage. There will be ample opportunity
It'll come
to
back over.
consider your comments.
One point that I wanted to pick on a little bit, this comes from Chris's comment disparaging surface parking lots. That anything is better than surface parking lots, but if you add 2 and 3 floors of surface parking lots on the first, second, and third floor, that's way worse. That's way worse. Like this, the area we're talking about is the gateway to the Ironbound from the city, and if we ruin these few blocks by jamming these walls of parking on the street level, we're going to ruin the community. We're going to be even more disconnecting Ironbound from Newark. We'll be putting these walls. There'll be desolate streets like downtown. We're trying to recover downtown now because we did it wrong, and now we're trying to fix it. But let's not do it wrong here. If you want more density, fine, we want more density, but don't allow more parking. Say, well, we're in a transit-oriented development area. We want more density. Well, we're not giving you more parking. In fact, we're only going to give you more density if you take out some of your parking. There's a train station a block away, 2 blocks away. Uber and Lyft are becoming more and more prevalent. If anything, we should be asking them to provide, delivery spots. So like all those like Uber Eats and delivery places and FedEx and UPS can drop off. And that people can come and take the Ubers or Lyfts and get off. Those kind of things are more important. But adding 2 and 3 floors of parking seems like the worst thing.
We're demanding retail on the first floor. We're not creating walls on the first floor. To the extent that a developer includes parking, he will do it as a permitted use, not a required use. We agree with you. We should have transit-oriented development that minimizes parking.
Get rid of parking minimums.
Well,
put in parking maximums.
Developers
Force them to ask for variances to get parking.
At this stage in the city's development.
Force them to ask for variance if they want parking. Get rid of the parking minimums. You don't need a parking minimum.
There's no minimum.
There's no minimum. Well, I know, but put in parking maximums and make it harder to put parking, because anyone that drives around in Newark at rush hour can see that we're full up on cars right now. And if we keep adding cars to the mix, it's not going to make Newark a more successful city. If anything, it's going to make it less successful. So we need to figure out ways to have fewer cars in our downtown. And we need to do that like yesterday, because when we start adding buildings left and right, it's already a pain now. If you add double, triple the cars, it's not going to make it a more pleasant city. It's not going to make it a more successful city. It's not going to make it better. We need to figure out ways to get fewer cars in our town. We have all these train stations. We have all this beautiful transit the rest of the country wishes they had, and we're not making enough use of it. We need to find out better ways to incentivize our big employers to use the transit. I mean, Penn can do it in a weekend. They went from having 80+% of their workers driving to see caucus over a weekend, having 60+% of the people taking public transit to Newark. Every one of our big employers should be doing that. We should figure out ways to help them do that. And it shouldn't be okay that just because X corporation builds a building, they should get 1,600 parking spaces in their building. That shouldn't be allowed anymore. That's just insane. Because as soon as that building opened, everyone experienced traffic congestion worse than before. And if you keep doing that 3, 4, 5 times, it's not going to get any better. And so this is the time. We're writing the ordinance. This is the time to add and fix that. We have to fix that. We can't let Newark become unlivable kind of a place. We have to make that work now.
Sergio, we agree, and we are doing all
put
of
it in
that.
the ordinance.
And
so don't agree with me. Just put it in the ordinance.
We've been doing that. Trust me, we've been exploring
put it in this ordinance.
all these options, right? And do a lot of research and analysis, and we've been incorporating a lot of that because the mayor's made it very clear with his team that we want the downtown to be a walkable neighborhood, right? Walkability is one thing we've been pushing hard. We've been pushing hard on electric shuttle services, more bike racks for more bicycles, more bike lanes. We've been working on those, right? All those mechanisms, right, comprehensively, and then deploying them as we go. So a lot of what you said, we've been really incorporating that. I just want to give a nice round of applause to Andrea Mason for doing this wonderful People's Assembly on behalf of the mayor. Like that, I think I was given the cue that we're closing out. Oh, okay, Andrea. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't even feel like we're closing out. All right. 10 more minutes we got.
Keep your responses
Okay.
So
we're gonna keep it
Carmelo,
short.
Carmelo, Newark is a small city. It shouldn't take an hour to drive into or out of downtown or through downtown. It shouldn't take an hour.
Got it, thank you.
Proposal.
Okay, somebody's back.
Okay, I have, this is a different question. I have some question about the new permitted uses.
Several newspapers in the community here, ethnic ones, we have the Star Ledger, we have other areas. I just question, how was the word gotten out? I mean, if the intent of the city was to meet requirements regarding dispensing information, making the community aware, I just find it interesting that how this process came about.
So I would only say that we have developed, you know, through the mayor's office and through the People's Assembly, Ms. Mason has developed a model to conduct community outreach, right? And we did do a public notice. We did do a public notice on this as well. So she, you know, made sure that every outlet within the East Ward, and we go through the councilman's office, who also communicates to everybody.
Who's out here?
Look,
Where's the council?
I'm just saying again, that's just another outlet, right? It's another
I'm
vehicle.
sorry, I'm just trying to understand.
No, I got you, and I'm trying to help you understand. You know,
I just, let me just say this, Carmelo.
trying to get you to understand.
You know what, if you look at the history of development in Newark, I'm old enough to know that, and I have a degree in history, okay? And if you look at what happened with the land swaps and what happened with all the developers that have come in here, and some good and some bad, you look at this map that you disseminated here, you see Ferry Street, okay, Union Street, I see Lotus Group, I see Edison Parking, I see Pepe, okay? You know what's funny? You look at that map and you look at the streets, but I don't see that. I see the developers, and to me, this entire thing is just a farce.
I see Joe Tomasi on it too.
It's a farce. You know what? Shakespeare would be proud. It would make a great Shakespearean comedy, okay? The only problem is that with Shakespeare, there was usually a good happy endings at his comedies. And here, there will be no happy. It'll be tragic.
So let me just say this, and again, I want to echo this, right? Ms. Mason does a phenomenal job when it comes to community outreach. The People's Assembly is about that, the folks that you heard from in here, the people. And I think that, you know, it would be insulting to say that, you know, it's a farce in its process, because clearly the folks came out tonight. We've had a great dialogue. It's been very healthy. And I think that if you're saying that we should have redevelopers here to speak on their behalf.
I'm not saying about redevelopers. I mean, redevelopers have no problem being heard.
No, I get
They have no problem. They've been involved with this process long before any of these people even heard about what was happening here.
They wrote it.
Do you represent a redeveloper?
No, I work for.
Do you represent a redeveloper?
I work for companies that have property in Newark. Okay, and that have developed properties, small properties in Newark, senior citizen properties for senior citizens. But I'm not Lotus Group.
But
I'm
so
not Edison
I get it, but so this can't this can't be about other groups, other developers that trying to throw darts at them.
Wouldn't you want to
We never incorporated them. We never thought about that, right? This is about the people. That's why it became the People's Assembly as part of what the mayor's vision and initiative has been.
I'm sorry.
I know, but you're making it seem, we don't want to imply that, you know, come on, we want to imply that we should have had developers here or their people
Why wasn't
here,
it published in
because
this
it should have been that way. It is
You want
about
to give
people.
notice to people. Why wasn't it published in News Americano and 24 Hours and Ecuadorian News and the Star Ledger and the Brazilian press?
Because you have
Brazilian press will put the article.
Because you have more effective vehicles that have already been ascertained by the mayor's office relative to how to communicate to the residents. I mean, there's more effective vehicles through the nonprofit organizations, you know, through the advocacy groups, to those that have been involved. So let me just say this. So the fact of the matter is that that's what had been done, right? So it is documented as far as the way in which we got the word out, and I think the process has been very transparent, regardless of what anybody wants to say. It's been very transparent, and I think that there's another meeting, you know, again, the 28th, and we're going to continue the series of dialogues as much as we can. We want to receive the input. We do. We want to.
It's only 4 more.
Thank you.
I have this gentleman again, Tanisha Drew, and the lady on the
Question
left.
for you. Can we commit to doing a third meeting, like in the actual zone or close to it? Maybe like a sport club and have actual public notice for people to come
You
out
can
for it?
get the last question. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just have a quick comment and then a question for everybody on the panel. The first comment goes back to this, what is your name? Sorry, sir?
Anthony Cabello.
Anthony, it's going to Anthony when you were saying like the people are here, like I don't see any like Spanish speaking panelists, it's writing this in people that these communities like Portuguese and Spanish speaking, so I would suggest that the following meeting that you have people either interpreting because they're probably.
Oh, we do have an interpreter here.
She's here. Without respect, I'm usually praised I'm the mayor.
No, but anything that the person in English.
all night.
I didn't even finish my comment. I'm not trying to interrupt you. I'm saying that nothing that has been said here has been translated to Portuguese.
And the Portuguese people and organization was invited since Tuesday last week. And I've been over and over.
I am not disputing what you're saying. I'm saying that nothing that's been said here in English has been translated on the spot to Spanish or English. That's what I'm saying.
We've been
Or
doing
Portuguese,
that.
sorry.
Even the
Portuguese
flyer was
or
in
Spanish.
Portuguese.
So
Even the flyer
that's
was
the
in
comment.
Portuguese.
That I don't think that the communities represent.
Okay, let me ask, anybody in here need a translator?
Well, that's a problem. If the answer is no, that's a problem.
If there were anybody.
Explica en español, yo lo puedo explicar en español.
The question just goes to process. The question goes to process, and it's whether you can commit to put everything online before board zoning meetings are going to be happening. And like when you go to the board zoning meetings, sometimes the TVs are shut off and nobody can see the development of the developers and like everybody.
That's a healthy suggestion, and we will do that. Yes. Good, healthy suggestion.
Tanisha?
Oh, okay, so our original meeting that was last year was at the Portuguese Club. When they presented the MX-3 to us, it was for 20 stories. So by the community coming out, we put it down to 10 when we really wanted it at 8 in the beginning. So why can't we just still have it at 8?
Or 10, even 10 if they promise 10.
So again, it is the administration's prerogative as to what makes the most sense. Going back to from highest and best use relative to everything from a transit-oriented development, as the mayor talked about with regards to Penn Station, it is a transit hub, and therefore the administration and leadership has their prerogative to say we want it to go up to 145 feet. And that's where it's going to be. I mean, that's the what at this point has been decided on. You know, the 8 stories is on one side, the 12 stories is on the other side. So we took into account everything in this map that was really discussed and reviewed and kind of evaluated over and over to say, okay, what makes the most sense? And it is a compromise. You know, a compromise is a win-win where you have the policy and the administration, and then you have the people. That's a partnership. That's a public-public partnership that really, at the end of the day, makes the most sense. And so the mayor has other initiatives tied to that. You're talking about the employment that he's trying to always create more jobs. You're talking about the environmental impact in order to clean up a lot of these areas that lack the environmental impact. Such as the air quality that we've been addressing with the community impact ordinance, which is being implemented.
And it's not because it's still staying down.
No, but it's being implemented. Yeah, but that takes time. I know. I get it.
No,
right now.
I'm talking about right now. Right now, our families can't breathe good.
Yeah. So
right now, people have cancer right now.
So based on
I
that,
don't understand.
one of the aspects of the sustainability, right, is requiring more trees, right? We know what the effects of the more trees does for the air quality, and also the living walls as well as the open space. So it's been taken into account and it's being incorporated as we go forward. So it's not like it's going to happen, yesterday, but it is happening. That's the only thing that I can reassure folks of in this administration that's being done.
So once you just leave it at 8 stories, like you said, we still have a problem with flooding. We still have a problem with traffic. And first of all, like I said, our infrastructure is weak. We can't take any more of these buildings. And what about and another thing is with the schools. The schools are overcrowded. And another thing is, like I said, Newark Housing Authority is closing down the majority of the public housing, so that's a problem. So to me, I think you should just keep it at 8 and we work out the issues that we already have. They don't need to be 10, it don't need to be 12.
And we appreciate your feedback.
You're right.
All right. There's 3 more process or issue-based things of the ordinance, just clarifications. First, why did it change from stories to feet? And It's 145 feet. That could, depending on how tall the story, each story is, that could be 14 stories. It could be 10 stories. It could be 8, whatever. It could be different, depending on how tall. So why that change? That's the first question. 2, did you consult with the water and sewer department, who's developing a long-term control plan for combined sewer overflow issues and has to come up with a plan for addressing CSOs when you put in the standards about stormwater? And then 3, the mayor mentioned something about a conditional approval for over 145 feet. Maybe this is in the Legistar version of the upload tomorrow, but where is that? Can you explain that conditional approval process and having to meet with the community beforehand?
So, I'll go backwards to your questions, right?
Okay.
So, this ordinance doesn't allow for conditional use over 145 feet. What
Yeah,
the
I
mayor
don't think
said-
so, but the mayor
Yes, what the mayor said is that there's a height limit of 145 feet. Throughout this city, there are height limits in different zones. And developers come in and they say, I would like to go above that height.
So D variance.
Yes, so they ask for a D variance and doesn't come with conditions. So I think that's what the mayor is
You
trying to
mentioned something about meeting with the community though, for D variance. I don't know what. Yeah, I know it is, so, I don't know if that's a new thing we're adding.
No, that's not
good. Well,
But I think what the mayor wants to include is that before the variance is issued, that developer has to publicly notice the community 10 days before a planning or zoning board meeting. And at that event, the public gets an opportunity to voice their concerns as to whether or not that variance should be approved.
Oh, there's no change. Okay, understood.
Right? So that
Maybe
process,
just confused.
that process does not change. The community involvement still stands, but I think the mayor didn't understand the particulars of how that is happening.
That's
But
okay. He has lots of departments, so
secondly, whenever we talk about these types of environmental standards, we're not just pulling this out from a hat. It is done in consultation. It's done in consultation with all departments within the city. And your first question, I forgot. Sorry.
The first question, why the change from stories to feet? Because the 145 feet, that depending how tall each story is, can mean many different stories.
Yeah, so when we look at the report standards, right, in consultation with our internal and external professionals, 145 feet became the standard as to how we get buildings that we are seeing in terms of design perspectives that will not go beyond 12 stories.
Chris, can I bring up one comment? I noticed that no one talked about the 5 feet limitations at Ferry Street. Ferry Street is protected by this plan.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
And within 100 feet of Ferry Street or anything more than Ferry Street. And none of the commentators seem to incorporate that protection of the character of Ferry Street. And I think that's important. We're going to talk about height limitations. Let's put it in proper perspective. That Ferry Street is being protected and codified in its protection. And I noticed everyone kept talking about 14 feet, 145 feet. No one mentioned or addressed the fact that this plan protects Ferry Street, which is the central driving character of the Ironbound.
And just to build on what Juan is saying, and this is not zoning from the R5 residential district. Even in our R5 residential district, there was always the intent that we will protect the integrity of the Ironbound neighborhood. And if we start thinking about in terms of distance parameters, we could extend our MX-3 beyond Macmillan and still be within a transit developmental zone. But that's not what we're doing. We're saying this is a unique community and we do not want to change its fabric. But building on your point, right? So the Newark Housing Authority is closing down its sites. Where are those people going? Where are those people going? We know they're doing that. Something like this in terms of bringing density is to capture that type of a trend that we're seeing. You see, part of our department is to see those trends, is to know those things. So we're not just thinking about developers and thinking in terms of market only. We're thinking in terms of Newarkers. This is happening in Newark. You know, so we think about Newarkers and the type of Newark we would like to see.
And they leave if you're not here. I don't understand because many of housing authorities have closed down, so where have the people went?
Yeah, well, you see, so I just always make the type of argument by saying they're leaving because before this type of funding, we didn't build to capture them. Inclusionary zoning starts January 1st. We didn't have inclusionary zoning.
And it only goes up to 40% of the area median income too, not the very extremely low income.
We just went to Washington D.C. talking about this, and you know the issue. This morning we just at Robert Tree Hotel talking about homelessness. So this is a real issue. And the job that they are bringing back in my mother and my grandmother days, they had jobs on every corner. So that's why it was an influx. And I do have a problem, like when I come here in Ironbound, it's funny how the community, they can have their stores. And then when African Americans had it at one time, and we don't have it again. So how do we start building our economics? That's when we have to start building our legacies again, if we really want our people to flourish.
I think if I may just touch on that note, I think you mentioned something earlier that's important. I think that getting you involved, I mean, whether it be a committee or some of the SIDS bids, things that we have going on with respect to the Community Economic Development Corporation in the Entrepreneurs Incubator Program, but I think it's imperative from what you're speaking of, right, that we get you more injected in
I'm already
that program. Okay, so if you are.
No, for instance, like we just had the NDD. The people from Peninsula are not buying our merchandise, not to the impact of where the community is. And the community cannot afford it because they are low income. So how do we get these corporations to come in and make a mandate that they buy from us?
And you know what, to that note, Newark 2020, which is where the Newark Alliance and the Community Economic Development Corporation, will be heavily involved with that because that's their mission. That's the goal right now, is the Newark 2020. And you will have a sidebar on that because we have the CEO here in the room as well, Aisha Brothers in the room. And so, we will have a sidebar on that.
We have one more question, then I have to entertain Sergio's last question.
I just wanted to comment and reinforce Lanny's point and Antonio's point. Remember, you say you want to talk to the people and get the people involved. I am just a regular resident, responsible resident of Newark. I'm not an urban planner like Chris. I'm not a lawyer like Lisa. Thank God they are in my orbit. Thank God I have, people like Drew around me. Because every time I come to these meetings, I walk away more confused than when I came in. So you do have a problem communicating. Every time I come here, and I do know about communications because that's my field. And there is no agenda, everything is random, there are not enough handouts. I saw this guy, I said, oh, groovy, we're going to have a presentation. No presentation. It's all defensive posturing, it's all argumentative. I have no doubt that there are many worthy things that are going on, but it just doesn't come across. And general statements like all the time, I know the mayor didn't remember, was it December, was it January, was it the end of December? Or, initiatives that we have, oh yeah, we have this initiative, oh, we've talked to experts, oh, we've talked to people. But who are these people? What are these things? How do you base your decisions? You are civil servants, you're working for us. And I am trying to be responsible, but I am not an expert, and I want to hear and walk out of here knowing that I can trust my officials, and if your goal is to try to create a situation of trust and to get the citizens of Newark to trust what you're doing and to get behind you, this ain't happening like this.
And so all I can say to that is, and I appreciate, again, your commentary, because I can only suggest that you, given your expertise, right? We have our own expertise in economic community development. But if communications is an area where this is not good enough, then I would ask you to join us and help us really with the message, right? Because honestly, that's what I would ask you. If that's democracy at its best, participation. So I would only ask you, and John, I think would be willing to bring you on board at EHD, volunteer, or $1 a year where you can help us. Quite frankly, with that. No, I'm serious. Show up tomorrow morning. It'll be online at 9 a.m. at 9:30. We need you in our office so you can the messaging. But it's truly imperative, and we don't mean to under any certain terms. Please forgive us if under any certain terms you think that we're being defensive or argumentative. It is not meant for that. Honestly, it's a true dialogue, it's a genuine intent for us to really get across what we've been trying to capture as part of the mayor's vision and his understanding of what the community is looking for, and reaching a compromise, a middle road that is a win-win for the entire city. So I would only ask that you guide us and help us, how do we make that better, right? Because we can only ask for your assistance. So now that you're an ambassador, right, we're deputizing you, John, can you deputize us? Okay, you're deputized. So tomorrow you can help us, truly, and really help us with this.
Okay, last, but I'll be there. Special question for Sergio.
Okay, I'm interested in maybe scheduling at least a third meeting, and I know Lizette is very interested in scheduling something over at SCP, which is actually like close, like half a block from the zone, which would be better than being a mile away where we are here today. But I question, showing hands, how many people are aware? How many people are aware there's like 300 acres of buildable land in downtown Newark, mostly surface parking? So like, that's really, we have a lot of land to build on. Well, you don't need to be dropping 25, 20, 40-story buildings in the middle of Ironbound. I mean, I'm not against building, and if downtown was all built up, I'd say, well, come on down a little bit, but I don't see why we have to drop those big tall buildings in Ironbound when we have all that land that we should build on.
Sergio, can we quote you on that?
Yes, please.
All right, you're not against building, okay. but I'm going to close with saying this, that the reality is that part of Mulberry Commons, right, the old Triangle Park, right, which it was in the works for 10 years until this mayor came in and said, no, this is nonsense. We got to wrap this up. We're going to lock you in a room and we're going to come out with a solution. And that's what we did. That was, honestly, we ironed that out December 30th of that year. We were all in a room, literally hammering that away. Right? We're hammering away at that, and we got it done. So Mulberry Commons requires those surface parking, owners to now redevelop the 22 acres in that area, and it was for that reason. So just to your point, I understand where you're coming from, and trust me, we're doing that with these mechanisms. It's just that they do take time. But we appreciate everyone. I think Ms. Mason is into this evening. I, on behalf of my team here, and say thank you to you all for coming out and spend this lovely evening with us. And we'll hold you guys accountable to make sure you follow up with us on these committees and these volunteer assignments. So
third meeting.
So with North People's Assembly, I'm not sure how many of you have been following North People's Assembly, but it is one of the new initiatives through the mayor's office that is supposed to represent the voice of the people, hence community meetings being hosted by North People's Assembly, i.e. this one. So in proper form, when there is a community meeting, whatever the topic is, we try to make it required that whomever the individuals that are responsible for whatever the topic is are here. So for MX-3, the Housing and Economic Development personnel needed to be here. If whatever the topic, there's a department within the city that is responsible for it. So if you want to propose a date and I get it on their calendar, absolutely. I also want you to know that North People's Assembly is not just Andrea Mason. Right now, though, it is only two people, Andrea Mason and Levita Johnson. And more importantly, because North People's Assembly represents the voice of the people, we need the people to be a part of the database. So many of you I have seen at some of the other meetings, but our database is growing but slow. Because, the word isn't, we've done robocalls, but on the robocalls, it doesn't say, hey, register by going here or there. So when you signed in, that registration form will automatically put you in the database to start receiving the city, the emails regarding the city agencies and what's going on. I also want to thank Lygia DeFreitas, who is, as you heard, the East Ward senior aide to Mayor Baraka, because honestly, without her, I wouldn't even have anybody in the East Ward to contact. So, because besides working at Ironbound Rec Center years and years ago, I haven't really been in the East Ward working on a regular basis to have some contact. So I want to, again, thank each of you for coming, especially for staying till the end. And we do have another meeting on Wednesday. So we have taken it to the ordinance will be up on the website, on the web tomorrow. We will have handouts of whatever was presented to the council. There may also be a presentation. I thought it was gonna be a presentation, but you know, that's yeah. But you know, so we appreciate those suggestions. We are sincerely trying to understand what it is that the community wants, and that's why Newark People's Assembly is representing the voice of the people. So truly, from the bottom of my heart, that's what Newark People's Assembly has been charged with from the mayor. So know that these kind of meetings aren't in vain. We really are here to hear exactly what you're saying, to then go back and consider them in before the actual decisions are made. So I thank you again for coming. The next meeting, the next meeting is on Wednesday, same time, 6:30 to 8:30, but it's gonna be at Ironbound Learning Center on New York Avenue. I want to add also with Newark People's Assembly, because the city is so large, and depending on the topic, like for this, it only affected East Ward. But for some of our topics, they affect every ward. So when I have to do at least one meeting in each ward, I try not to revisit sites, because I feel like the city is so large that we should be able to go to different facilities. So Sports Club Portuguese actually was on the radar to have a meeting, but we did our introduction meeting of Newark People's Assembly here. That doesn't mean that that we can't have another meeting there, but I'm trying to work. The East Ward is large, parking is very limited, but
this issue affects that particular part of it.
And that's
it's a mile
fine.
from here.
No problem.
It's a Newark
It's law. Sometimes you need to come from down here and up here, because a lot of things they don't do down here that they do.
Right. So we're trying to spread it around in different neighborhoods. But sir, I'm more than willing you give a date pretty soon so that it can be properly publicized before December 15th, when people start taking vacations and stuff. All right. So Sergio, the onus is on Sergio.
Do you have a favorite date? Give me a favorite date.